VR46 Ducati. Big change this year is the black and yellow colourway. The change from the white and yellow. The white and yellow looked a bit weak, looked a bit eggy, but now it's a bit more contrast on it. It looks so much more stronger, looks really strong on track. You can't miss these bikes wherever you are. Of note is this black to yellow fade, a very tight fade. Personally, I wish it was more of like a screen effect than as a airbrush fade. That way you could get in like a sun and moon sort of graphic into it. This is Valentino Rossi's bike. Valentino Rossi is probably the most graphically aware and astute athletes of our time, probably runs the biggest merch store in motorsport. They hinted it at the front with the sun and moon graphic, but it's very muted and very sort of like half-hearted. You may as well go full in Rossi. It's what the fans want, it's what the sponsors want. I don't know why they just don't go full Rossi on this bike. The logo packaging is really great. All the brands is really tight and really considered and is really packaged and neat. I like that. I like how it's done. Very considered. Digi's leathers also look fantastic with a half and half. Could have been an idea for the bike as well as a half and half split. Points deducted for these terribly dirty Michelin logos on this launch bike. What the hell's going on there? But points added for the colour coordinated paddock stand wheels. Team Gresini 2026. Not a lot's changed. That's about it. I don't know. So what I would say is these athletes have the same derivative number style, and they've all got the same thing. Pretty much, it's all so boring, and they just want to be unique like everybody else. And the first rider that really embraces doing something different will really succeed in building a personal brand that unlike any other rider. Okay, so here we are in Trackhouse's HQ with the 2026 Aprilia. Last year I dragged them a bit because their bike lacked quite a lot of imagination, and I felt the team lacked ambition with creating something really interesting and unique because they didn't have a title sponsor. They just had a Trackhouse branded bike, and they didn't even do much to develop their own identity within that team and within that livery. So this year we spent an extra hour on the design by the looks of it, so it's a bit more considered, a bit more structured, something more going on with it, so give them credit for that. So last year what I looked at and identified was them going for this sort of NASCAR approach where you have one sponsor sponsoring the whole bike. And that's the sort of nature of NASCAR, having this one sponsor versus a fractal sponsorship system that most teams and most motorsport teams have. And NASCAR is unique in having this approach. We have seen it this year. So they have ran a Superfile edition of the bike, but they also run a Superfile NASCAR car as well. Now, I dug a little bit deeper into it, and I did find that Mr. Brainwash was an artist on their car, and they did a Mr. Brainwash Superfile NASCAR for Trackhouse. And so basically, when you're doing a brand association, or you use an artist to create like a livery, you're farming their aura, or you're using them to create something that you wouldn't normally do. But while you're also farming their aura, you're going to be also carrying their baggage, right? So for Mr. Brainwash, you'd be using, while you're getting his technical splatter on your car, you're also getting to use an incompetent artist with no unique vision, sustained only by celebrity association and manufactured mystique. So yes, you get to have the splatter, but you also have to sort of deal with that. And it's no slight on Mr. Brainwash. You do you, very successful, way more successful than me will ever be. However, you've got to look at the marketing for that, because getting Mr. Brainwash isn't an idea, it's an execution. Also, we've seen it with they've run the Gulf livery again. So here we are, please don't move, don't get up because you're going to block the camera. So just maintain that pose as long as you can. The Gulf livery, look, this is going to be really popular. It's going to be really successful. People love it. It has that easy calories. People get it. It has that sort of man cave, dad oil can feel, which I don't really like. I'm not a really big fan of the Gulf livery. I like it when it's period correct, but it's a bit like it kind of needs to be moved on and adapted and updated a bit. And for me, it just needs to be a bit more. Okay, so future David here, and there's been a bit of an update. I recorded this Trackhouse bit earlier on the season, and there's been a change. So Superfile are now the official sponsors of Trackhouse, and they announced that with Trackhouse's Instagram with this image. And this image is insane. I can't tell if it's AI, render, photography, all three. Doesn't even show the bike right, doesn't even show the branding really well. It's so bananas, you've got to give it to them. It's almost avant-garde. But believe it or not, Trackhouse are now the vanguard of livery. The old paradigm is for a bike to be seen through a crowd, be visible. The new world is this bike that looks like a downloadable skin. It's for 4K, 8K TV, super slow-mo, 16:9, not NTSC, not VHS, not 4:3. It's probably the future of MotoGP, future of Formula One, HD imagery, bitmap imagery. It doesn't matter about whether it's clear, it can be seen clearly or not. Like I said, it's not my cup of tea, but game recognised game, you're probably looking at the future of motorsports. Well, here I am in Austria to visit my friends at Kronreif and Trunkelplatz Matterhofen, and this is the Red Bull KTM RC16 Road Competition 16 valve. I have to be quick because Anaya is not going to be able to hold this pose for much longer. And we're in the warehouse here underneath the factory. It's, yeah, let's face it, it's a bit of a budget shoot, but it's kind of effective. But what I do like about the launch is they've released these quite nice candid photography of Tectoire and factory, forced flash photos, Terry Richardson. I quite like it. It's not a big budget, but let's face it, it shows the kits and the bikes in a way that you wouldn't normally see, and that's what I want to see at a launch. Don't show the same thing all the time. Show it in a way that to be a bit more richer and a bit more interesting. Okay, so it's a Red Bull, which means it's super strong, super effective, extremely well branded, great visibility, loads of confidence. There's no meddling technical sponsors, it's pure prime stake. I also think KTM have the best trucks in the paddock. Or certainly since the HRC rebrand, I can imagine they've got the best tool boxes and the most organised toolkits. The organisation, the cleanliness and the sharpness just gives it a good, strong DNA feel that you can feel is just passing all the way through that team. I love the midnight blue colour, it works so much better than black. I love it in the matte as well, it's great. The sun number board on the front I adore because it reminds me of 500cc racing and I live in the past. Side note, if I was Liberty Media, I would mandate a specific space or shape for the number plates on the front. Reason being, when you own the rights and you don't own anything on the vehicle, I think you should have like at least some space that you can control. And this is in a positive way because, as an example, the Premier League, they use for the whole league, they mandate a set typeface and style for all the jerseys. And what that does is it gives the league a really nice, unique, unified look. And if you left it to the kit manufacturers, it'd be a bit of a graphic design Wild West, and they'd be Comic Sandsing it to the death. So that's what I would do. I mentioned in my motocross video, which you should go watch right now, this concept of habituation. Now, this is where you get like a fatigue from seeing repeated stimulus. And this example, the Red Bull bikes. We've had these bikes branded in the same way for the last few years now. Nothing's changed. Now we've got 4 bikes again in the same style, and we are getting a bit bored of it. What happens is then this habituation means you get like a sort of creative erosion, which leads to less engagement with the team. When this happens, you get this concept called hedonic adaptation. This is the worst thing that can happen, because this is where you get an emotional break between you and a brand or the team. You no longer sort of have a positive feeling or a negative feeling, you're just meh. And if you're meh or you've got no opinion, that's the worst thing you can think about anything, certainly like for a team or a brand or anything like that. And it's quite hard to repair. The one thing you would do for something like this to break that habituation, where you just see it as wallpaper, is you do a special livery. And this is like a novelty spike to gain interest. And if there's one team that doesn't do that, that would be, historically, that would be Red Bull, KTM. Luckily, they got Pedro Acosta, who is a human novelty spike. Well, here I am in the Dolomites. It's way colder than it looks, but I've dressed up nice and cozy. My feet are freezing. I packed my wrong shoes. But look what I've got warming me up. It's the Audi of motorcycles, Ducati. Or as they say in Wales, Ducati, where I'm absolutely not. What do we have? Well, like most teams this year, it's business as usual, evolution, not revolution. This year we have this new motif, the Go Faster stripe, Centenario stripe, Centenario stripe, a more darker Rosso red colour, that's a heritage colour, and some of the same problems. I don't mind the stripe. It's quite clean and simple. It's effective. Just because it's like super basic doesn't mean something wrong with it. It's just it shows a bit of strength, and it's really easy to apply into other elements like apparel, teamwear, transporter rigs, and things like that. It's a bit cramped in there, but they're doing their best. The timeline between a race bike and a production model is quite different. So I wasn't expecting to see this on a street bike, but I have seen some integration with the Panigale Superleggera, where they've been able to apply this graphic treatment quite effectively. Well, so we've got this Rosso red. We still got some of that nice neon red, the McLaren red. We've got some on the tail section and a bit on the tank, gives it a bit of depth. And we sort of have that issue of sponsor integration. I spoke about this last year. This is down to the limitations of the brand's identities rather than that of the team. although the team, I think, must take responsibility for failing to get this integrated. So we have all around this bike similar size logos and all in their lockups, packed in tight, like a carry-on suitcase. Not much room to breathe around the bike. Now, this may be the best solution to a commercial problem. However, I don't know about you, but when I look at this bike, I don't think of Lenovo at all. This is the Lenovo era of Ducati, the most successful era as well. This is down to pure, poor brand integration. It's just got not much charisma happening at all. I'll give you an example of a great integration that Ducati have done where, closing my eyes, I can think of that bike very, very clearly, and that's the Feeler Ducati. And you can sort of remember that sort of Feeler era. You might say, well, Desprez, there is a halo or semiotic effect with Feeler as a streetwear brand, as a sports brand, boosting the bike's identity. And I go, okay, fair enough. Xerox Ducati, another IT company that had a much more stronger charisma, style, look, and an era that this just doesn't have. What else? So we've seen a commemorative version or commemorative livery for the Desmo this year with the patchwork of all the previous liveries. This was a really great idea, something I'd sort of do myself. But with this current layout, it just didn't have the flexibility to give the idea justice. I expect to see it in a special edition Panigale. I expected to see it for Ducati Week it's just been, but I'm sure if they do it, it'll be nice and elegant, with a lot of room to breathe, without all these lockups for the logos. So in conclusion, this is a golden era for Ducati. It just doesn't look like one. New year, same Yamaha. Same form over the last few years, still quite recognisable, still iconic. On a macro level, metallic blue is aesthetically pleasing. It is nice, it is pleasing. R1s look great in this blue, but a flat blue would integrate better with the black and green. Looking at the blue here, you know, it's metallic, it's glossy. There's so many different colour blues happening all over the bike. What this does, it gives it a feeling of luxury more than a feeling of sportiness, in my opinion. It has been a bit of a weird launch. When the images were released, it had this appearance of being rushed, stickers semi-stuck down, stickers laid over fairing gaps, some really paint defects here and there, and Photoshop errors in the official images. I spoke about KTM being organised or having the appearance of being organised through a really tight livery, and this is the opposite of that. It was sloppy, and I don't know if that's a metaphor for the organisation. Satin and gloss can feel a little bit outdated. I can have this bit of an unfinished look to it. While it is one of the most recognisable, dare I say iconic liveries on the grid at the minute, it's never really set the pulses racing. Does the job, but does feel a little stale right now. It's not helped with the integration of Monster's branding. That's more down to the limits of what's possible with Monster's branding and how it's implemented. What's a positive is that this is Monster Yamaha era. It has that identity, and more than Ducati Lenovo, as I mentioned when I was in Italy previously. Monster just doesn't have that flexibility to express itself on a car or bike at scale. That isn't black. And that inflexibility can lead to things looking a little bit stiff. Bikes are landscape shaped, sorry, not portrait, and the claw is a portrait element. So there's always going to be like this compromise to make it fit within the bike and within the package. Monster's strength is its claw. In fact, my daughter the other day said, what does that shape mean? And it's everywhere in my studio, it's on my fridge. but for me they lack a couple of things as a way to express the brand beyond its core elements. Mainly this transition between the claw and its surroundings. The claw can have this feeling of it being like a bit of an island, and it relies on this transition to make it become one with the design. When it's black, it's very simple. When it's a different colour, there's a lot to happen to make it look integrated. Yamaha have tripled down on this blue, but the bike needs a little bit more green, a bit more monster for me, or more black. A common thing among modern liveries is that there is this boundary between factory manufacturer and sponsor brand. So visually they look like they're like shaking hands rather than having like a tight sort of handshake. The ones that hold hands for me are the ones that work the best. Back in Italy for the Novale launch of Aprilia RSGP 26. I have a massive soft spot for Aprilia. My first bike was an AF150, which is super cool. And I had a second gen Miele, which is, yeah, it's pretty good. Thanks guys, appreciate it. Yeah, do it again next year, but a bit more budget. This is a bit, I don't know, it's a bit Yamaha. Bears lock it in, Jorge. No, this is Loris Reggiani, actually. Aprilia have taken the role of the black character on the grid, and I like that. There's a little nod to heritage with this magenta and violet trim lines, key lines. A bit of a nod to the past. Aprilia have always been very good with colour, in my opinion. I fell in love with JPS Nortons with their embrace of black on black throughout their package. It was always visually really strong. But ask any photographer and they'll tell you that a black bike or a black car is the worst to shoot. With my own work, there's a lot of contrarian positions taken for aesthetic purposes, right? So I zig instead of zag. My Royal Enfield prototype is extremely brash, bright and colourful, 90s sort of style. But a lot of my own bikes are black and quite boring. In fact, 15 years ago, I made a series of short films, and one was about the colour black.
Jet black, pitch black, coal black, black magic, black arts. Before there was life, there was black.
I was helped by some really influential people. They were directed by Joe Marcantonio, who's now a feature film writer and director.
There's been too much death in this family.
Matt Wakeham of Fu Action fame. And I even persuaded Miriam McCartney to do all the voiceovers.
Before there was life, there was black.
Black is the colour that is the absence of colour. As long as there's been storytelling and characters, it's the colour of the outsider. The outlaw, the unknown, danger, death, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. This is very much a Western culture framing. And the inverse, of course, is white. So white being that purity, clarity, peace, order. And there's certainly no white bike on the grid at the minute. There is a term called black hat and white hat, which is used in storytelling as a simplistic way to visually code a hero and a villain. It was originally from Westerns. So you'd have a white hat, the sheriff, the reluctant hero, qualities of purity, lawful, the divine. You have a black hat anti-hero, the outsider, the unknown, secrets, the shadows. We even saw a meta of this in the Westworld reboot, where Ed Harris was LARPing as a black hat cowboy, purposefully as a villain. So after this you might think, well, in branding terms, why would you use black if it would have sort of like sinister or outlaw undertones? Well, in storytelling, narrative can be twisted for your needs. White can also be cold, hypocritical, kind of medical feeling, cultish, lofty, you know, like the false saviour. But black can also be serious. It can be outside the normal. It can be elegant and stylish. The principal loner and against the flow. These binary black and white hat characters are often in the hero's journey, which is like a simplistic narrative storytelling structure created by Joseph Campbell. If you don't know this, you know stories of movies that have used this structure. The Matrix, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars is probably the most famous. A reluctant hero is on a journey. Luke and Darth Vader is the villain. Luke is wearing all white. Vader is all in black. So who do you kind of identify with? Well, there's also a character called Han Solo, who's mostly wearing black, but has a bit of white. So an outsider, an anti-hero with a heroic streak. So it's not always black and white. So with this black bike, with a bit of white, are we on a hero's journey? So I think we probably are, and we're step 7, which is approach to the ordeal. New for this year is this slightly clunky lion graphic on the bike. It's a little bit tortured trying to get it to sit with the A. In Aprilia's own words, the lion, a symbol from the Mark's history and a part of Aprilia's racing DNA, as well as representing strong ties with the territory, the Leone Alto, blah, 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 power, strength, determination, courage, blah, 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 stubbornly tackling difficulties and re-emerging even stronger and more steadfast. Did I get that? Yeah. You know, why say a few words when you can say several hundred to say lion? Well, there are a few ways to interpret that. You could say, well, that's just post-rationale marketing, backfilling to justify adding something interesting to the bike, something that was missing. Or Despre says, sounds like part 5 of the hero's journey, crossing the threshold. Now, this lion symbol is a heritage item. It's clearly from Aprilia's MS sponsorship era. So in the early noughties, Aprilia were running this MS livery. MS is an Italian cigarette brand, and it was really popular, really successful. It was a really cool era for Aprilia. They had all our faves: McWilliams, Edwards, Hager, Harada, Melandri, riding for it. So black and gold, it was really, really sweet. Wait a minute. A white bike? Maybe our outlaws were once heroes? The lion logo is semiotic inheritance. Semiotic meaning symbols, signs, colours, etc., etc. The old partnership had very strong bonds, and when it ended, there's a benefit to retain those semiotics, those bonds. It's the reason why retail Subaru and Pretzers are blue, because they inherited the 555 WRC sponsorship colour. There's more value for Subaru to retain this association long after the relationship has ended, even for no financial gain. So now it's mid-season and we've got a new sponsor, Monster Energy. With this black bike, we have an alignment of factory bike and sponsor. Not this. This is great for Monster. Think Marlboro sponsoring Ferrari, red brand, red team. The logo is canted to fit with the canted look of the existing livery. Canted is better. When I worked with Ken Blanc, we always had canted logos on the cars with a natural black transition to the rest of the livery. Looks a little less stiff. It's not quite there, but I'm sure it will be next season. As ever, energy drinks have a massive footprint over this sport. Sometimes for good, sometimes they're a little bit confusing. MotoGP, though, is really good value for money. When you understand the coding of these brands, it makes a little bit more sense. So Red Bull. Red Bull is about aligning with elite achievement, performance, technique. It's bright, it's sunlight. There's a sun in the logo. Monster is about aligning with culture. It's loud, outsider, rebellious, dark, the underground. It's literally black. Red Bull is Jet Lawrence. Monster is Hayden Deegan. Red Bull is Marquez's success. Monster is late stage Rossi and the tribe. Red Bull is the achievements you wouldn't think possible, but Monster is the achievements you wouldn't attempt. And this is the idealistic black hat, white hat of motorsport. Success for these energy drinks is aligning to the athletes that can amplify these values. So when Jorge Martin was being a bit of a rebel, that suits Monster.
Before there was life, there was black. The colour that says everything, yet says nothing. When all black cannot be used, use white.
Pramak Yamaha, they've made a bit of an effort this year with this sound dungeon. It's a bit more interesting, I guess, and not another white studio, another colorama to present your bike. It was billed as a reveal, but let's face it, this is a presentation. This is the same bike as last year. I ended the factory Yamaha section talking about the boundary between factory brand and sponsor. Now, Pramak being a private team, but with factory bikes, it's the opposite of this. It's had the most care and integration of their sponsors and their look on the bike. Like last year, it's really dialed in, it's really integrated, but in many ways it's quite a traditional looking bike. It's my favourite again, 2 years running, but again it's the same bike. It's pleasing to look at, isn't it? And the reason why is that it has these analogous colours for their colourway. Hey look, I'm on a colour wheel. Now there's a reason why the Pramak bike looks great, is because these colours here are the livery. You've got these blues and purples, and together they form what's just called analogous colours. They have a harmony. Now, behind me is orange, which is a complementary colour to blue. And on the bike there's a little flash of orange, which just gives it that extra little bit of tasty flavour. Now, no one's going to be busting out a colour wheel when designing a bike like this, but it shows why it's just a touch more likeable. What else? Well, we have these metallic colours on the front here, well, everywhere, but we've got a blend on the front, we've got fades, and the multiple colours aren't really evoking a feel of luxury or performance. To me, this is more hot roddy or even fishing lure, which is I'm here for. We have hard colour brakes, we've got the fades, and we've got some decent sponsors, so it all adds up. Pramak and Yamaha are probably the bikes that, in terms of the livery, is the closest to an F1 style. You could put these on an F1 car and it would integrate, it would fit in. Same for Monster. While it's not Monster Yamaha, while it's not the best, you can see how it sort of would work on an F1 car. Whereas like a Gresini or a Trackhouse, the look is quite a small look, so it probably wouldn't translate as well. Also, you know, this Pramak bike, you could strip off all the logos and it would make a really nice street bike, a bit more interesting than some of the bikes that are available to buy right now. Well, here I am back in Japan, where I always get a warm welcome from my friends at Honda and HRC. So what do we have? Bit of a funny angle, isn't it? You've got this red and blue block-in with a white stripe through it, a bit 80s, a bit Freddie Spencer era superbike. I think what Honda have done a really good job of is aligning their MotoGP, their superbikes, their street bikes, and even the motocross bikes with the same look. That's a really tricky thing to do, and they've done a good job of that. What else? I mean, wise man once said, it's better to have people hate your work than be indifferent. Be loved or hated, but never be in the middle. I'm that wise man that said that. Now, no one's going to love this, but no one's going to hate it. Corporate success. I think Oscar Wilde probably said it better. There's only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. Big Honda slab logo. I mean, I love that. I love this logo. It's a design classic. Oscar would have loved that logo. I'm telling you, he'd have been all over that. Now, I mentioned earlier about my short films produced with my friend Matt Wakeham. He co-created the comic Get the Freebies alongside Jamie Hewlett of Tank Girl and Gorillaz fame. Well, Jamie Hewlett has a massive slab tattoo on his forearm, which he had done years ago. And he's definitely not like a hardcore Honda fanboy or like a biker, but he's one of the most astute observers of culture of our time. I think that anecdote is a touch more interesting than talking about this red. Oscar Wilde's most famous work was the painting of Dorian Gray. It was written in 1890, so if you've not read it yet, skip ahead. Dorian sold his soul in exchange for eternal youth and life. He never aged, but a portrait of himself he kept hidden absorbed all his aging and sins. The story concludes with Dorian realising that his sins can never be totally absolved, and with that guilt, he stabs the portrait of himself in the heart. His servants are awakened in the night by a scream. They rush to the room and to find on the floor an unrecognisable old man, ancient. And only by the rings on his fingers can they identify him as him being Dorian. The painting is younger and more brighter than ever. Repsol Honda was HRC's Dorian Gray painting. Repsol Hondas never aged, they never changed. They have been the visual sin eaters keeping Honda unchanged for decades. Year after year, same looking bike, there's bloody orange wheels, Crivier, Rossi, Stoner, Marquez, but Repsol is gone. Honda is now not quite looking younger than ever, but inside there could be something beautiful. Team Rothko, not really a reveal or a presentation because he died in 1970. But what we are viewing is the Seagram murals in the Tate Modern in London. My day job is as a contemporary artist, try my best, and this is one of my favourite works. And it's kind of like a cliche to like this sort of stuff because it's a bit sort of pre-art foundation course. Oh, I like Rothko. A lot of my mates that are artists don't like this either. It's because this artist has kind of transcended art to become this sort of totem of excess because they're very valuable. All the opinions in this video are interpretations. They're my feelings. Everybody sees things differently. And now to you, when you look at these paintings, they might look a bit sort of basic, a bit meaningless, a bit like a bit of paint thrown up on the canvas. Anybody could do that. Without the context of where they're shown, the lighting, the temperature, the acoustics, that's very much the case. But when you go and see these paintings, you bathe in them. You don't sort of watch them or look at them, you stare at them. And they begin to sort of do something to you. It's really hard to explain. It's like new code is being uploaded into your brain as you stare at these paintings. They animate over time. It's really hard to explain. It's like trying to explain a song to somebody without using lyrics or a tune. It's just quite tricky. Go and see these paintings, Tate Modern. It's free in London. You don't even know what they're about, to just enjoy them. MotoGP bikes, F1 cars, also exist within their own context. They're not supposed to be viewed statically on a stand, but in motion or mid-motion, in photography, in film. Art is a catch-all term for something that makes you feel something, right? MotoGP bikes are not art. They're the output of a web of engineering, design, and commercial briefs that come together to form a sport. Design answers a question. Art asks a question. But this sport can make people feel something. And it might be, like for me, when I hear the MotoGP bikes warming up at the track as you're approaching it in the morning, it does something to you. And it might be the smell of the fuel, the rubber, the colour of titanium. It doesn't really matter what it is, but if it can make you feel something, then it doesn't really matter what the labels are for what these things are. Now, a lot of my criticism for the bikes is the lack of creativity and the overpowering of the commercial departments. And these paintings are called the Seagram murals, as they were commissioned to go into the Four Seasons restaurant in the Seagram's building in New York. It was a commercial brief, and this was in 1958. So he got the brief, he painted 30 paintings to make a select to go into the space, and then in 1959 he decided not to go ahead with it, pulled out the project and handed the money back. He didn't feel that a restaurant was suitable as a suitable venue to display his paintings. The context of the restaurant changed the meaning of the paintings. He was quite sensitive to the way his art was being portrayed, the sort of bourgeois nature of it, the bourgeois nature of this sort of restaurant and the association with his own art. But it was a commercial brief. And look, commerce can be really exciting if it's given the chance to be creative. Honda LCR. Look, the MotoGP paddock is always a better place for having LCR in it. They always have had this privateer feel about them, a Bosch colour, and then 1,000 sponsors stuck all over the bike. This year, it's not like it used to be. I have my suit that was created for me by my friends at Alpine Stars in celebration of this bike here, because this was basically a satire of commercialization in motorsport. But now it looks quite normal, doesn't look like it's over the top, which gives you a sort of, shows you where we are in the sport. It looks pretty normal. Things have changed at LCR. It's no longer as mental as it used to look. This year it's quite tidy. It's not quite as good as last year. We have the green and red Castrol streaks happening, but it's got this half HRC branding on it, so it's just not as impactful, and it's half and half, so it's half as good. Got this Castrol logo, which is quite weak and has kind of taken away a lot of the mojo of the bike, believe it or not. They should have used the Castrol palette to create the Honda aspect of it rather than create a separate part of the bike. It just, gives it that half and half sort of feel. Over there we have the Marera bike, which is pretty much the same thing as the HRC bike. It features this God 55 branding that's quite prominent. I quite like this branding, I quite like the look of it, but it's a sports betting company, so you kind of going to lose marks for that. Okay, so what have we learned? Well, overall it's been a tale of the sponsorship and the teams and the tension between those two things to make it sort of look appeal and have interest. MotoGP is probably like 15 years behind F1. F1 is where it should have been now. It's caught up to where it should have been. And MotoGP, it's a niche sport with niche appeal. But we have seen something change in terms of, obviously, where F1 is in terms of its awareness and its effectiveness for sponsorship. Only the energy drinks in MotoGP offer any sort of FMCG appeal. So FMCG used to be the prize sort of sponsors to have FMCGs, fast moving consumer goods. So stuff like, cigarettes, food, drink, low value items that have a high volume, but have a massive brand awareness. So I've done a little bit of breakdown of some of the sponsors. And so if you look at Ducati, just look at the orange and red here. That's industrial sponsors and automotive sponsors, so motorcycle parts and stuff. And what it shows you, like over half of their sponsorship is for this sort of appeal. So it's not surprising. It's a motorcycle company. They're advertising motorcycle parts, so you're going to see that as the appeal. But again, it's like an inward appeal for that sport and that team. Gresini, same thing again. What's interesting is this large orange section. So this is like industrial machinery that makes machinery, and it's showing a limited appeal for the team and for the sport, because you know, a lot of these brands, you're going to look at them on a bike and go, well, I've not a clue who they are, what they're for. That's kind of like the point, right? So you're going to look, well, what are they? But they are probably buying access to the team rather than displaying or advertising, or building brand awareness. VR46, even less diversification. VR46 is only going to be skewed by Rossi's input, and Pertamina is an Exxon company, so we'll come to that later. Monster Yamaha, a bit more healthier in terms of the diversification, but again, you know, niche appeal. This is F1 now. This is Mercedes. So the orange and red are gone pretty much, but we've got this green and blue bit. So green and blue is technology, fintech, SaaS, software as a service, technology. And you can see way over half, 2/3 of their sponsorship now is through this. And this is the change we've seen now. So yes, they've caught up to, F1's caught up to where they should have been. The massive amount of money now in F1 is through these companies, these startups, these Silicon Valley companies, these tech companies, and they're buying access. They're not, the sticker on the car is a bonus, but Oracle, sponsoring Red Bull, for the access, for the hospitality, for the business to business aspect of it, the socializing, the schmoozing of their clients. And if you go to an F1 race and see the experience of hospitality, it's like on a level that's never been like before. And if you go to MotoGP hospitality, it's pretty, you know, colloquial and small, and only Red Bull really sort of has that touch of F1 scale. This is Quick Step Pro Cycling. Now, Quick Step, look at how diverse their sponsors reach is. So what this shows is how healthy it is. So Pro Cycling, way more mass appeal, way more diversified sponsors, way more sort of safety and adaptation, and yeah, it's just quite interesting, because I've always thought pro cycling was way past MotoGP in terms of its development and appeal, and you know, we've had this renaissance of cycling coexisting with a renaissance of motorcycling in the 2010s, but with cycling, everything from retail, independent stores was way beyond that of the motorcycling industry. Another thing to look at here is the sort of social footprint. You know, so look at Mercedes F1, right, 34 million combined. It's dwarfing everything else. You kind of expect that. It's nothing surprising. This was an index look at market capitalizations of sponsors. This is one way to look at it, but it's a bit brutal, because, you know, not all the teams that sponsor Gresini, for instance, or VR46 are on the stock exchange, so you can't really sort of apply it like that. But no surprises again to see F1 dominating, but also this is a market cap, an index score. So a non-index score shows, okay, this is like the real comparison. So yeah, this is going to be skewed by a lot of technology companies here, but Quick Step's right in the middle, it's right in there, so good job for that. This is a breakdown of social media audience by platform. So again, it's not surprising to see this huge skew for Formula One, but what you do see is just a massive more platforms, more work being put into diversifying their social media platforms. And MotoGP, again, it's very small and very, you know, MotoGP is kind of limited by this sort of backward thinking, slow thinking, back in the day, boys clubs, management. It needs to really be woken up in terms of how it's going forward, because it needs a lot of change. That's about it. So see you in 27.